What I'm about to show you in this video will completely change the way you look at Joy Taylor, Kendra G, and this entire single women podcast wave. Because what happened in that clip wasn't just a conversation, it was a full-on exposure of how the industry works, and the part nobody is talking about. Watch this till the end, because once you hear the real reason behind their strategy, everything will make sense. The other day, while I was casually scrolling through social media, doing what most of us do when we're half distracted and half curious, I came across a post that immediately caught my eye. It featured two names that my audience definitely recognizes, Kendra G and, of course, Joy. Seeing those two together on the same screen automatically made me pause. And honestly, that moment set off a whole chain of thoughts about a trend that's been growing in real time, right in front of us. What unfolded from that one post was something we've watched play out again and again in the entertainment and media world. In fact, it's almost predictable at this point. Many women who enter the industry with ambition and visibility, who gain some degree of recognition, eventually hit a wall. I'm talking about women like Gotti, Kayla Nicole, Joy Taylor, and others who were given opportunities on established shows or platforms but never quite solidified themselves as indispensable voices. They weren't necessarily lacking talent, but in a competitive industry where personalities have to pop, connect, and hold attention, they didn't always stand out in the way networks hoped they would. When a network feels someone isn't resonating strongly enough with audiences, the decision often comes swiftly: cut loose the weakest link. And when that happens, when someone loses a seat on a show or is let go from a media platform, there's a familiar move that follows almost immediately. Instead of disappearing from public view, these women pivot into something more independent: podcasting. It's a space that feels safer, more controlled, and far more forgiving than television or corporate media. A podcast lets them build their own environment, craft their own topics, and speak directly to people who choose to listen rather than people who stumble upon them. And that's exactly the phase many of these women are in. Their shows may differ in style, tone, and subject matter, but the underlying strategy is nearly identical. They're targeting a very specific demographic: women between the ages of 35 and 45. This age group, while diverse, often includes women who are dealing with a unique blend of life experiences, some unresolved bitterness, some regrets about past choices, frustrations about dating, relationships, or career paths, and a desire to feel heard, validated, and understood. Podcasters recognize the emotional intensity present in this audience. They know that if they can tap into that energy, they can build consistent engagement. And consistent engagement, of course, can be monetized. So when Kendra G and Joy link up or collaborate, it's not just two personalities getting together for fun. It's a calculated move designed to pull in the listeners who find comfort in relatable stories, shared struggles, or candid conversations. The mid-30s to mid-40s demographic gravitates toward content that reflects their own challenges. They want discussions about dating frustrations, career transitions, emotional healing, and the complex realities of womanhood during this stage of life. These podcasters are offering exactly that. We're watching this dynamic unfold in real time. A growing cluster of women, especially those in their 30s and 40s, are forming entire communities around podcasts where hosts open up about heartbreak, disappointment, fears about the future, or reflections on the past. These conversations become a kind of emotional outlet. And because podcasts feel intimate, almost like sitting in a living room with friends, listeners begin to trust these personalities, even if they've never met them. That trust feeds the platform's growth and, ultimately, its profitability. During one of these podcast episodes, Joy said something that really highlighted the emotional undercurrent of the entire conversation. It wasn't just a random comment, but a moment where you could see exactly who the message was meant for. She spoke in a way that resonated with women who feel overlooked, misunderstood, or tired of dealing with shallow interactions, particularly in the dating world. It was one of those statements that wasn't necessarily groundbreaking, but it was raw and relatable. And when someone with Joy's visibility says something relatable, it sticks. This moment also served as a reminder of the broader pattern these women often speak to. Many of them share stories about navigating industries that judge them harshly, workplaces that didn't value them, or relationships that didn't unfold the way they hoped. They open up about the pressure of being successful, the emotional labor of trying to maintain a public image, or the difficulty of balancing ambition with personal desires. All of this creates content that speaks to the exact emotional terrain of the audience they're targeting. From a business perspective, this is smart. Podcasts thrive when they speak directly to the inner lives of their listeners. And women between 35 and 45, many of whom are juggling careers, relationships, family responsibilities, or the lingering questions of what now, are a powerful demographic. They're old enough to have lived through major life experiences, yet young enough to still feel the pressure of future expectations. They consume content intentionally, share it with their friends, and often become loyal listeners. For the hosts, these podcasts also become a way to reclaim control. Instead of being subject to the critiques of producers, ratings, or social media trolls, they create their own stage. They set the tone, choose the topics, and decide how vulnerable or polished they want to be. Even if their original platform didn't value them, their podcast audience will. This cycle, women leaving traditional media, starting podcasts, targeting emotionally charged demographics, forming communities of listeners, has become one of the defining features of the modern media landscape. And that one social media post featuring Kindred G and Joy wasn't just a random moment. It was a snapshot of that entire pattern playing out once again. So when Joy made her comment during the show, it didn't just serve the conversation. It fit perfectly into the broader narrative these podcasts are built on. It was a small piece of a much larger strategy, one that relies on emotional resonance, relatability, and the hope of building a loyal, financially supportive audience. And judging by how many women in that age bracket tune in week after week, it's a strategy that continues to work.
There are men who will be like, I want to have children, but don't talk about the wife, marriage, family part. Just the like, I need to have kids to carry on my legacy.
Yeah. Well, Nick Cannon is the perfect example of that. You know, he talked about how he had so many kids because what he was going through. So we only use celebrities because everybody knows what we're talking about when we say
but there's plenty of people that do this.
There's plenty of people like that. So there's a lot of men, whether we agree with it or not, that is important to them. Like they want to procreate. They want to have little John and little Kenny and little Tommy. That's very important to them. And obviously it's not that important to Joy.
No, I just don't think that you're starting a legacy. I think you're making...
In other words, she was basically expressing that many men today aren't looking for genuine relationships. They're just interested in the physical aspect and nothing deeper. I got what she meant. She was pointing out that some of these men talk about wanting to build a legacy, but their actions don't reflect that at all. And honestly, she's not wrong. Eventually, all of us will fade from memory, so the point is noted. But then Kendra G jumped in. And that's when things took a different turn.
Okay, you're right.
And I have this conversation with men a lot because for whatever reason, I look like a breeder and people like will argue with me about having kids.
Oh, yeah. No, you would be a wonderful woman for a man to have kids with.
No, I would be a terrible person to have kids with.
Well, you don't want the point I'm making is I understand why a man would want to get you pregnant.
I don't.
Why? Okay, let me break it down. First of all,
what? No. Once initially, sure. Right? The process seems fun. There's other perks.
No, but
like once I've said, yes, I don't want children, there couldn't be anything less appealing about me if you are someone who wants children.
No, absolutely. Right. But
however, there's many follow-ups.
Right. Absolutely. But I'm saying the reason of the why is, first of all, to get Joy Taylor pregnant and to say that I have a baby by Joy Taylor and no other man can say that.
Oh,
do you know how many men would pay buku money just to say I have a baby by Joy Taylor?
How much are we talking? There's no amount of money. There's no amount of money.
But no, I just want you to understand. I understand the desire why a guy would want to have a baby by you. Absolutely.
That's such a disgusting thought.
I understand that. I get both sides of the coin. I get how you're disgusted by that. Well, actually, I don't get that part. But
why it would be no. I'm not disgusted. Like, they're gonna clip this up like Joyce. I am an insane person.
Kendra G then shifted the conversation in a way that came off almost dismissive of Joy's concerns. She started telling Joy things like, "Girl, plenty of men would line up to be your child's father or do whatever you want. It was delivered as if Joy had endless romantic options waiting on standby. Here's where the disconnect shows up. No one is saying Joy Taylor isn't attractive. She absolutely is, and she's had access to plenty of men in the industry. But the critique being raised in that discussion was more about her energy toward relationships. From the outside, she may not always project the kind of openness some men look for. It's possible the observers are wrong, but that was the argument being made. In their view, Joy doesn't embody the qualities that certain men, especially high-performing ones, would prioritize when choosing a long-term partner. And at 38, she may not be in the mindset to shift her outlook. Yet Kendra continued hyping her up, implying that men would jump at the chance to father a clout baby with her. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not, but that wasn't even Joy's point. Joy clearly doesn't want to enter her late 30s or early 40s as a single mother by circumstance. And she's well aware that she has no shortage of men willing to take her on dates or have casual encounters. That isn't the issue. The debate was about whether a highly accomplished, grounded, serious man, the kind who is ready for real commitment, would choose to fully invest in someone like her. The argument presented in the discussion was that this type of man isn't exactly lining up for that, even if a man did decide to be intimate with her, and even if that intimacy resulted in a pregnancy. The argument being made in that conversation was that such a situation still wouldn't automatically lead to marriage. The point wasn't about Joy herself as a person, but about how modern dating dynamics often work. The claim was that a casual encounter can easily occur, but that alone doesn't inspire lifelong commitment. And no amount of encouragement from Kendra, no amount of playful hyping, no amount of "girl, you got this" energy is going to magically alter the underlying circumstances of the dating market. Gaslighting, pep talks, or exaggerated affirmations may feel good in the moment, but they don't transform how relationships realistically unfold. This isn't just about Joy. It reflects a larger pattern that has shown up time and time again. We've seen similar cycles with other public figures, where women receive lots of excitement or attention from men who might be fun, charming, or good for short-term vibes, but not necessarily aligned with what they genuinely want long-term. Lala Anthony often gets brought up in these discussions, not because of confirmed facts about her personal life, but because of the public perception surrounding the types of men people imagine she attracts. Those perceptions tend to follow a predictable script. People hype her up for getting attention from younger men, calling it empowering, thrilling, or validating. But excitement doesn't equate to compatibility. Younger men, or men who are captivated by status, beauty, or the thrill of proximity to celebrity energy, often don't have the stability, maturity, or consistency that women in certain stages of life typically look for. This isn't a knock on younger men, it's an acknowledgement that life experience matters. Someone in their early or mid-20s may not be equipped to offer the emotional steadiness, financial grounding, or long-term planning skills that someone in their 30s or 40s might want. These younger men might bring chemistry. They might bring spontaneity. They might bring the kind of physical confidence that fuels flings and temporary excitement. But those traits don't always translate into lasting relationships, commitment, or partnership that withstands the complexities of adulthood. There's often a difference between someone who can entertain you and someone who can build with you. And in many of these situations, the excitement falls into the first category and stops right there. So when watching the interaction between Joy and Kendra, it was hard not to feel a sense of déjà vu. The pattern was eerily familiar. Kendra brought this bold, amplified energy, almost like a hype woman stepping onto a stage. She gave off the kind of bravado that says, without actually saying, "You're jealous of me. You wish you were in my shoes. You wish you had access to the kinds of men I attract." It's that classic self-confident persona, half playful, half defensive, that shows up a lot in discussions where women reassure each other about their value in the dating market. But that's not really what most men are looking for. At least, not the group of men these conversations tend to revolve around. Men who are stable, accomplished, emotionally grounded, and ready for serious connection. Men who take their lives seriously often want something deeper than surface-level energy. They don't just want beauty or bravado. They're not looking for someone who constantly needs to announce her value or seek validation from strangers online. What many of them want is a partner who can genuinely contribute to meaningful conversations. Someone who can show emotional intelligence, who can listen without immediately becoming defensive, who can discuss life with nuance rather than with performative confidence. A lot of this gets lost in discussions about dating expectations. Social media tends to magnify the hype while minimizing the substance. If a woman says men are pursuing her, the comments fill with "Yes, queen," "They're intimidated by you," or "Any man would be lucky to have you." But the truth is more complex. Attracting attention is easy. Attracting commitment is something else entirely. A woman can get thousands of likes, dozens of DMs, and plenty of compliments, but still struggle to find the right relationship dynamic that suits her long-term needs. That's why the discussion around Joy and Kendra was so striking. It wasn't about tearing anyone down. It was about pointing out that confidence alone, hype alone, or reassurance alone doesn't transform the dating reality people live in. If anything, those things sometimes distract from the introspection that would make dating easier. The louder the hype, the less honest the conversation often becomes. And when Kendra steps into that space with her signature boldness, her proclamations that men want this, men want that, you're the prize, it reinforces the surface story without addressing the underlying truth. Some women don't need more hype. They need accurate reflections. They need honest discussions about what kind of men they want, what those men value, and how alignment happens in real relationships. The irony is that many men aren't looking for women who believe the world envies them. They're looking for women who are self-aware, grounded, capable of partnership, and open to growth. Men who are serious about their lives rarely invest in someone who leads with defensiveness or ego. They invest in someone who brings peace rather than competition, depth rather than performance. All of this is what made the Joy and Kendra clip so intriguing. It wasn't simply two friends chatting on a podcast. It felt more like a window into a much larger discussion happening across the culture. It tapped into ongoing debates about modern dating expectations, the inflated influence of social media validation, and the way people, especially women in certain online spaces, tend to hype one another up without ever addressing the deeper truths underneath the surface. It was a moment layered with contradictions, confidence mixed with insecurity, encouragement mixed with avoidance, empowerment mixed with denial. You could almost sense that the conversation wasn't really about what was being said, it was about what wasn't being said. It reflected how easy it is for people to use humor, bravado, or exaggerated reassurance to avoid confronting the uncomfortable parts of their own reality. And because so many viewers recognize this pattern in their own circles, the clip landed like a cultural mirror. It forced people to step back and ask themselves, what exactly are we watching here? Is this genuine support or a performance? That's why the exchange resonated far beyond the podcast itself. It highlighted the difference between authentic self-reflection and the performative confidence social media often celebrates. And whether viewers agreed, disagreed, or felt somewhere in the middle, the clip undeniably sparked conversation. But that's just my perspective on it. What about you? Another episode wrapped. Thanks for tuning in to Celebrity Doctor. Hit the bell, stay tapped in, and we're out.